You do the counting thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then should I silently talk? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll go quiet. All right, hello and welcome to another edition of the Legal Geeks. Today I'm here as always with my partner in geekdom, Josh Gilliland, and we are here to discuss an author that we both enjoyed during our getting longer everyday lifetimes, who recently passed away. And I'm going to have Josh say hi and see if people can guess who we're talking about. Hey, Josh.
Hello, Jessica, America. How are you tonight?
Hi, Josh. I love the Get Up, and since you have invested in this great Get Up, I'll let you tell us who we're here to discuss tonight.
We're going to talk about Tom Clancy, who redefined thrilling military adventure novels in the 1980s, who I thought was very important because when The Hunt for Red October came out, it helped cleanse and validate all those who served in the military, the CIA, NSA, and other branches of government after a very rough time in the 70s post-Vietnam. And as the story goes, after Reagan read The Hunt for Red October, he posed the question, who the hell declassified this? And you think that Tom Clancy, is this guy in Denver who just studied up on a bunch of things he was interested in and then wrote an amazing book. You can't help but, tip the hat and feel in awe of that individual.
It was an amazing book. I still remember reading Hunt for Red October. I actually lived in Connecticut at the time, very close to Groton, of course, where EB or Electric Boat was. So for me, a lot of this was actually very personal. At the time, EB was one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest non-government employer in southeastern Connecticut. And of course, we also had the naval sub base there then too. In fact, in my later years, I was a waitress at the sports bar where all the enlisted guys from the sub would come and hang out. So I have a personal affection for submarine guys. They were all good tippers. But anyway, Josh is making faces, but we'll stop there. But anyway, that book was amazing, absolutely incredible. I was already a fan of the Bourne series by Robert Ludlum, but The Hunt for October took, the detail and the history. It was basically like this geopolitical, military historical textbook in some ways, but it was also a gripping story.
Agreed, and I'm sure that you'll get lots of fan mail from submariners now. Maybe we'll put together a little comment, contact us area where they can leave thank you notes. But yes, I'm sure they are quite appreciative of those days. I read Hunt for Red October when I was in elementary school, and absolutely loved the book. I looked up one of my favorite passages where they talk about the sinking of the ES Polanovsky, where that has the critical reactor meltdown and they lose the sub. And the detail that went into discussing the sinking was just absolutely phenomenal. And, the passage that begins, Petrovkov knew he was dead. He saw the paint on the forward bulkhead turn black, and his last impression was of a dark mass surrounded with a blue glow. The engineer's body vaporized an instant later, and the massive slag dropped to the next bulkhead aft. It then goes on to great detail talking about a Russian submarine sinking, and it's just, I remember reading that several-page section in an oral argument class that I had in high school. Also a passage from The Sum of All Fears, where with the submarine that's lost, that the Russians accidentally sink when they realize World War III is being averted. But amazing detail. And, I'm not ashamed to admit that I stayed alive to see the film Hunt for Red October, because it was released while I was hospitalized, in 1990, and one of my recovery goals was to go see the movie.
Wow.
And so I remember watching, the premiere on on TV, because the Navy rolled everything out because it painted them in a very good light.
Yeah.
It was Sean Connery.
And Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, him. He was actually very good at it. I liked him as Jack. I liked Harrison Ford more, though, and we'll see what happens with Chris Pine taking up the role. But
I love Chris Pine as Captain Kirk. I don't know about him in other roles.
We'll see. I liked the book more, because you could tackle more detail. I mean, the film was great.
It was. Sean Connery was awesome. I mean, he did. That was his movie, and he was fabulous.
And, but I just wish they could have, defeated the Russian Alpha in the same way. Even though playing chicken with the torpedo was cool, but, there's nothing like ramming another submarine to finish him off.
Yeah.
That was just, I remember, as the Red October came through the bubbles, and just awesome. I mean, who doesn't like that? It was just, and going into detail that, after the Americans get the sub, it's not like instantaneous as fast it was as the movie, because they supply her in the middle of the night, and the helicopter that supplies her goes, that's a little weird. The sail is further aft, and the pilot's realizing that they just supplied a Russian sub, not an American one. The Russians watching E.T. and which was a favorite of President Reagan's, but Clancy was able to talk about the international appeal of E.T. and it was just neat that he did that. So
was that your favorite book? The Tom Clancy books that you read?
There are several that mean a lot.
Yeah.
I like Some of All Fears, because the last-ditch plan to save, to defend Israel with nuclear weapons was called Operation Joshua. And that's tough not to like. I'm instantly attached to that. I liked Clear and Present Danger. Hearing the president say, you want to play hardball, let's play ball. It's like, all right, I'm kind of okay with the secret war in South America to fight drug lords. I'm strangely okay with this.
I don't see anything that can go wrong with it.
What could possibly go wrong? Go wrong. Maybe we should rethink this strategy. But yeah, and but I really liked Without Remorse. And the fact that it goes against everything we believe in due process, where you have, it's the story of John Clark, John Kelly, prior to going into the CIA, and you have him as the former Special Forces guy, and a woman he was, in love with, getting killed by, drug lords, and he starts waging a one-man war against criminals. And on one level, that's quite appealing, but absolutely wrong.
Yes. And
then working with the CIA to go in and try rescuing American POWs, the high-ranking ones that aren't even listed, as alive. So the Russians have them in North Vietnam. And the failed rescue plan because there's a mole. And the person they think is the mole actually wasn't the mole, and they kill the wrong guy.
Oof.
Leaving the mole in place for a few other books. I think they take care of him in Cardinal of the Kremlin or one of the other later ones. But that kind of bothered me. But it showed the tenacity of, even though it was a failed mission, he captures the KGB agent instead of killing the KGB agent. And that impressed everyone at the CIA, because then they could force the Russians to put our guys into the Hanoi Hilton so they would be listed as alive, not missing, and they would stop being tortured and all those horrible things. And then the climactic ending with faking his own death in his boat, because there's great seamanship in the story. Clancy knows how to, being a sailor, Clancy knows how to write that like nobody's business. Even talking about anchoring and steering a twin-engine boat with the throttles as opposed to the helm, it's like, yeah, Sure, he could talk about how a nuclear explosion happens in Sum of All Fears and the Seven
Yes.
States and all that, but how to anchor, it's just rock on, that's just absolutely a brilliant mind who will be missed.
Yes, he will. Well, I know there are a ton of legal issues that come up, of course, throughout his books. Again, anytime you've got a military thriller, it's kind of like 24, where the law is thrown out the window. It's much more satisfying when you don't follow the law, of course, to get that bloodlust going. But what were a couple of other issues that you know of from his books?
Unfortunately, the ones I didn't read because post-law school, reading for fun took a nosedive. But
Yes.
Ryan becoming president would be an exercise in how our Constitution works, because you have Ryan become VP, and while I didn't read the book, it sounds like it was done through the 25th Amendment, because the VP died or resigned or whatever happened. And then you have the president, Congress, then the Supreme Court taken out with a 747 crashing into the Capitol. And, the recently, minted VP becoming president and the following book, Executive Orders, would have had tons of issues. Because how do you rebuild Congress?
Yeah. Wow.
Because we have, at least governors could appoint senators, with the exception of a couple states that have played with the rules and then changed them back to their detriment at times. But then you get, and I'm looking at you, Massachusetts. But then you get the other extreme of, which is fascinating, of the House of Representatives, because you can't appoint a House member. And so you start looking at special elections then, and not everyone has a provision set up for if your congressman dies.
Wow.
So just tons of issues like how do you put the government back together if you have a decapitation strike? So
wow.
That's a big one.
Okay. That is a big. Oh, go ahead.
Anything jump out at you from your read of Tom Clancy books?
No, it's been a long time since I've read any Clancy books. I think it was A Sum of All Fears was the last one I read, where the detail on how to build the nuclear bomb, was that in Sum of All Fears?
Yes,
yeah,
it was.
Okay, I love detail. I love fiction that has a lot of, facts in it. But that one just kind of beat me down. I was like, all right, I was done that, and plus some of the torture scenes in some of the other books. I don't do well with torture scenes. So I think that's kind of an end of my Clancy time. And really, it was always hard to beat A Hunt for October. But no, I think I was reading those well before I went to law school, so I was not really thinking of the legal issues. But you told me something before when we were talking about Clancy that, speaking of legal issues, from his personal life, that's really neat, but now is maybe embroiled in litigation. What is that?
So, you have he got a fan letter from a kid who was dying from cancer. And he befriended the kid and, visited the kid in his hospital. And it was actually very decent. Took the kid to Disney World with parents and everything.
Oh.
And then after the child died, he founded the Kyle Foundation. And this is the early 90s, so beginning of the public use of the internet and the mass use. And he tried building, I guess it would be a web portal or maybe quasi-social networking by today's standards to connect kids who had cancer so they could talk to each other, and then parents of kids with cancer, kind of trying to create a big support group and trying to help others. And they raised a ton of money. Well, there were issues with it that he found out and about later that with the person who was running it, and he ended up winding it down. But I had a friend who knew Clancy. She did some of the artwork and graphics on the computer game Harpoon.
Oh.
And so she knew his writing partner, who wrote Harpoon, and, and talked about how he liked helping kids with cancer. And so that was he wasn't the type of guy who called a press conference to announce he was going to go do something good, which is always obnoxious when people who are trying to help feel they need to bang a gong in order to do that.
Yeah.
But I remember watching C-SPAN, and yes, I readily admit I was watching C-SPAN to see Tom Clancy speak. And he talked about, the unfun thing of, wanting to help kids with cancer. And so that was, again, I read Clear and Present Danger in a hospital, so I kind of have an idea, not the cancer side of things, but I understand what it's like to be a patient. And I admire that. So that was something that was an unsung quality about him.
Wow. A man of many talents and good traits. Well, he will be missed. It is sad. I understand, though, you should actually give a plug. I understand you said that he has one more book coming out. Is that the word?
Yeah, and so there's, I probably should start reading these again. But, you have the entire Ryan presidency. And so I kind of want to take a dive into that. And it looked like, I'm not positive because I haven't read it, and I was looking at this up on Wikipedia, that apparently, Ryan's challenged by, I guess it was a former president, so the guy, if elected, could only serve one term. So, but I'm not positive on that. So I thought, that's interesting. Is that the situation here? So,
that sounds right up your alley.
Yeah, so I'll check that out and verify if that's the actual case. But as you can see, and you remember, these books aren't quickies.
No.
And I actually looked up court opinions, mentioning Tom Clancy, and multiple judges, made comparisons to cases being, the same size as a Clancy novel. And most in the 90s where that took place, mostly in the 90s. But it's interesting. There were judges who made wisecracks about that. So
they were big. Comfort October wasn't too big, and I do feel like I may have to go back and read that, or at the very least, watch the movie again. Although you're right, especially the ending of the movie was not nearly as satisfying as the book. But it does have Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin, so for that reason alone.
Yeah, it's Sean Connery, and it was one of his best later films.
Yeah.
And so it's tough not to like that. And I remember stories about the production that, because they used Russian sailors. And a lot of them just kind of popped up to attention, when he would walk by, because he had the command presence of, that's just who he was. So that's kind of a fascinating character study. So.
All right.
But,
very cool. Well, I love the outfit, Josh. That's a very nice tribute to Mr. Clancy.
And the jacket's my grandfather, so this was his flight jacket. So.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so he wore this working on B-17s at the Yankee Air Force in Michigan, and I don't know how old it is, but at least the 80s, possibly 70s. So it's it says Gilliland. This was 2 generations prior.
Very cool. I like that. Very nice. Mr. Clancy would approve.
I'm sure. Very kind. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh. It was fun talking to you again. We will miss Mr. Clancy, but he did give us a lot to remember him by.
Stay geeky, America. Stay geeky.
Bye, Josh.